Hello and welcome to a Talmud Israeli production. Today we'll review the highlights of this week's course of Daf Yomi study, Masechet Pesachim, pages 92 to 98, Tzadi Bez through Tzadi Chet. The Mishnah 92. Gersh nit gayer be'erev Pesach. If a person converts to Judaism on the 14th of Nisan, Erev Pesach, Beit Shammai omrim tovel v'achal piskol erev. Beit Shammai says the person can go to the mikveh for the conversion and prepare their Passover sacrifice and eat it at nighttime. However, Beit Hillel disagrees and says one who separates himself from the orla, from the foreskin, in that they convert by circumcision, is like they separate from the grave. And just as a person who separates himself from the tumah of the grave has 7 days of a purification process, so too the convert has to go a 7-day purification process and could not observe the Passover sacrifice if their conversion happened within a week before Pesach. So the Gemara says that the machloket between Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel is only concerning a person who was a Gentile who converted to Judaism, not concerning a Jew who happened to be uncircumcised and circumcises himself late in the game on Erev Pesach. Why this machloket regarding the convert? Because Beit Hillel is concerned that since a non-Jew cannot be impure, cannot be tameh, and only a Jew can become tameh, then this Gentile who might have been in the vicinity of corpses of dead bodies in the week before Pesach, just prior to his conversion, but yet was able to observe the Passover sacrifice because he didn't have to worry about the tumah that year, the next year the very same thing will happen. And they'll have a problem of impurity of tumah, but they won't realize that there's a difference between this year and last year. That the current year, they would not be able to do the Pesach sacrifice without a week's purification process. In order to avoid this kind of confusion and error, Beit Hillel says you're not allowed to do a Pesach sacrifice within a week of your conversion, whereas Beit Shammai is not concerned for that possibility and does not issue any gzeira, any decree. Tzadi Gimel, 93. What happens if a person converts to Judaism between the first Pesach and the second Pesach, between 14 Nisan and 14 of Iyar? Alternatively, Katan Sheigdila, bar mitzvah boy, who has his bar mitzvah sometime between Yud Daled Nisan and Yud Daled Iyar. So does that person, that convert to that recent bar mitzvah boy, have to observe Pesach Sheni or not? So, according to the Gemara here, Rabbi says, Chayav la'asot Pesach Sheni. He must make a second Pesach. Rabbi Natan, however, says no. Whoever had an obligation the first time around in Nisan could have an obligation in Iyar. However, whoever did not have an obligation in Nisan, namely this convert who converted after Yud Daled Nisan, or this bar mitzvah boy who was bar mitzvahed after Yud Daled Nisan, has no obligation when it comes to Yud Daled Iyar. Tzadi Daled, 94. Tanya. Rabbi Yossi Aglili Omer, Derech Shomani Mahalach Shnayim V'Shleishamim. When the Torah says that a person who is on the road is exempt from the first Pesach and has to observe the second Pesach, Pesach Sheni, I might have thought that the road is 2 or 3 days away from Jerusalem. It's pretty far away. So from the fact that the Torah says uva derech lo haya, it teaches you that he doesn't have to be far away. Even if he's just beyond the threshold of the temple courtyard, that is far away enough to be eligible to participate in the second Korban Pesach, Pesach Sheni. Tzadi Hey, 95. Whether the Korban Pesach Rishon in Nisan or Pesach Sheni in Iyar, either one, both of them, requires the recitation of Hallel during the act of preparing the Pesach, meaning in the temple courtyard, while it's being done, Hallel is being sung. My time, why? So the Gemara says, sort of incredulously, Efshar Yisrael Shochtin Pischem V'notum Loveim Beinonim Hallel? Is it possible, is it plausible, could you believe that Bnei Yisrael would offer their Passover sacrifices or shake their lulavs on Sukkot and not sing Hallel? It's implausible. Therefore, it must be done. Tzadivav, 96. Tanya ben Bagbag Omer, Minayin l'tamid sheton bikur arbim kodem shchita. How do we know that the animal used for the korban tamid, the daily sacrifice, morning and afternoon, has to be inspected for blemishes for 4 days prior to it being offered? Well, Shneimar, tishberu lakriv li b'moado. You shall safeguard it to offer for me at the proper time. That's the pasuk regarding the tamid. And regarding the Korban Pesach, it says, it shall be safeguarded until the 14th. Well, in the case of the Korban Pesach, the animal was taken on the 10th of Nisan and was slaughtered on the 14th. to teach you that there's 4 days necessary of bikur, of investigation, to make sure it's a valid animal for sacrifice. Just as this is true regarding the Pesach, so too it is true regarding the Tamid. Tzadi Zayin, 97. Kodem chatzot lav avudhu. There are rules concerning the status of an animal that was lost. It was supposed to be a Korban Pesach, and yet the animal was lost. What do you do now? Especially if later on it's found. Well, the Gemara here tells us that if an animal, which was supposed to be the Korban Pesach, was lost track of sometime on the morning of the 14th of Nisan, the owner of the Korban of the animal just lost track of it, doesn't know where it is. If it happens before Chatzot Halachic noon, it's irrelevant. It doesn't matter that it was lost at that point. If it's found prior to noon, then all is well in the world. It's only considered an animal which is avud, lost, if it's lost during the time frame for the slaughter of the Pesach, which means after noon. Tzadichet, 98. Tanu Rabbanan. Hamafish pischov amet. What happens if a person were to designate an animal for the Korban Pesach and died? If the person died. Im benom muna imo, if the son of the deceased was also registered to participate in that particular Korban Pesach, then Yavienu l'shem Pesach, the son who inherits the animal, shall offer it in the temple as his Korban Pesach. Im ein benom muna imo. However, if the son who was the heir of the deceased was not registered on this Pesach, then Yavienu l'shem shlamim l'shisha asar. Then the son cannot offer that animal as his Korban Pesach, but rather should offer that animal as a shlamim, but to do so on the 16th of Nisan. Why the 16th and not the 15th? Meaning, why not the next day? So the Gemara answers, Kasavar nedarim nedavot ein kravim b'yom tov. This halachic statement follows the viewpoint that vowed offerings cannot be brought on Yom Tov. That on Yom Tov, within this school of thought, you can only bring those korbanot which are essential for the Yom Tov, but extraneous nedarim and nedavot have to be brought at another time, namely the first day of Chol HaMoed. Everyone have a great week. Happy Purim to one and all.